Are so much book you need for high school?
I'll show you how to make sure you have all the money for my books and even some extra. It's called budgeting, Dad. Making a budget is the most important thing you can do to track your money. It keeps a record of how much you make, how much you spend, where you spend it, and most importantly, how much you can save. Write down all your income, write down all your expenses, see where you can cut down and allot more money to more important things, like saving.
The time by Carrie Chris is 6 p.m. Time for CBX Business News. The Business News headlines is brought to you by QMax Wealth Management, making more possible.
Policy priorities, energy investments, and a race for Fed leadership. Good evening, and welcome to CBX Business News for Tuesday, August 5, 2025. I'm Rondine Williams. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the newscast locally, leading economist urges incoming government to prioritize economic stability as Jamaica's general election approach. On the regional front, ExxonMobil set to return to Trinidad and Tobago with a major ultra-deepwater oil and gas deal. And over on the global stage, U.S. President Donald Trump rules out Besant for Fed chair, narrowing candidate list to 4. Stay tuned as we unpack these stories and more right after the break.
It's feeling so good right now. Feeling so good right now. Yeah, yeah. It's feeling so good right now. Feeling so good right now. Yeah, yeah. It's feeling so good right now. Don't never, ever, ever wanna calm down. No, no, no. Yeah, yeah. Let's all get fit. This summer's a drip. Hip dips and split. Power in the mind, let's get healthy with it. Sometimes your body's so hard, but your body wants it. And then your head is so home, and it's so like this. So we gotta go 1, 2, 3. One more now. 1, 2, 3. Let's go. One more now. 1, 2, 3. One more now. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go.
Hi, I'm Nielsen Rose, host of Let's Talk Stocks, reminding you that health is indeed wealth and time is really money. Why not spend a little time with us? Weekday mornings, 9 to 9:30 a.m. for your daily dose of business, economic, and investment insights.
I'm trading stocks to achieve my financial goals.
I'm also trading stocks to achieve my financial goals.
Start a conversation with the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Check jamstockx.com for information and a list of registered stockbrokers. You can also call the Jamaica Stock Exchange at 876-967-3271 for information on how to begin. I am achieving my financial goals.
I'm achieving my financial goals.
My name is Cecil Foster, and you are watching the Caribbean Business Exchange.
We're here to open a savings account for my son John. I really want him to start saving and managing his own money.
And I need for Safe to visit my father in New York.
Okay, based on what you said and our risk assessment, he will qualify for simplified customer due diligence requirements. I'll need your ID, proof of income, TRN, and John's ID as well.
Okay, here you go.
Opening an account is easier than you think using Simplified Customer Due Diligence Requirements, also called CDD.
Wealth is not simply counted in dollars or cents, but in the time we spend with love, in love, giving love. Wealth is not simply a means to an end. It is the means to live out loud. Wealth is more than money. It's about family, the memories you create, the legacy you leave behind, and your ability to enjoy life in the moment. It's also about seeing the QMAX possibilities and seizing investment opportunities to achieve the future you want and deserve. Which is why QMAX Wealth will focus on your investments so you can experience more. Because true wealth is truly more. To start investing today, call 876-926-7767.
The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with the latest macroeconomic and policy analysis ahead of Jamaica's general elections. As Jamaicans prepare to head to the polls, one leading economist is warning that the stakes extend far beyond party lines. Keenan Faulkner says the real priority must be policy continuity, urging the next administration to remain focused on long-term economic reform. In an exclusive interview with CBX Business News, Faulkner emphasized that fiscal discipline, labor market reform, and investment climate improvements must remain central to Jamaica's development strategy.
The areas of continuity, regardless of whichever party forms the government after the next elections, need to necessarily be those areas that relate to labor market reform and getting the sort of economic diversification, industrial expansion that we all need, because while unemployment continues to trend very low, the spending power heading into the rest of the economy has softened a little bit despite the recovery from Hurricane Beryl, and we see that evident in wholesale and retail in the last figures, because that segment of the economy was negative. And because that is dependent on person's spending power, which is also a function of their income, the government now needs to continue to move into higher value added goods and services and jobs that can now push us to the next phase of development that we are hoping for.
He says the incoming government must remain committed to fiscal responsibility, especially in managing the wage bill, a long-standing source of fiscal pressure.
The public needs to be apprised of how possible spending decisions may affect the key indicator, which is the fiscal balance. Does the government intend to run a deficit? And if so, how does it plan to finance it and eventually eliminate it? Or the expenses that are incurred within, how do they plan to manage those carefully? In particular, the wage bill, which has been a point of some concern for some time. Its revenues are also a source of fiscal credibility, because the government now needs to say, will its revenues continue to be robust to maintain the expenditure that it plans to maintain? And that is both in terms of its non-tax revenues and the revenues that are expected from ordinary tax sources.
That was local economist Keenan Faulkner. The government of Jamaica has signed a revised Memorandum of Understanding MOU with China Arbor Engineering Company, CHEC, to conduct feasibility studies for the next phase of its highway network as it doubles down on road infrastructure as a key driver of economic growth. The studies, covering technical, financial, environmental, and social impact assessments, will be carried out at no cost to the government and focus on two proposed expansions of the North-South Highway, westward from Miami Bay to Discovery Bay in St. Anne and eastward to Tower Isles in St. Mary. Speaking at the signing ceremony on Monday, Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness defended the decision to prioritize major highway development over local road repairs. He explained that toll roads are a strategic investment designed to generate long-term revenue, which will eventually fund comprehensive rural road rehabilitation.
What we're trying to do, and just to bring the public into the conversation and the understanding, is to build the highways that generate the economic activity that then generates the revenues that we then direct to the roads that pass by your home. And if you think about it, yes, you have to leave your home, you drive on the bad road, but then you get on the highway and you get to work. Now, when you get to work, we want you to be productive. We want you to have a shorter travel time. And we want to be able to move goods around the country quickly, from production outlet to market point of consumption.
He says the government's intention is to create a national highway loop, which is expected to boost logistic efficiency, improve market access, and increase national productivity.
Once we build out that highway network around Jamaica, which is the intention of the government is to build a highway network around Jamaica that you can get around Jamaica in less than a day. And smooth roads that connect you to anywhere in Jamaica. That's the intention. That will create the economic engine that will generate the revenues that we will then use to fix all the roads, including the roads that pass by your house.
That was Prime Minister of Jamaica, Dr. Andrew Holness. Now the news. Alaska Financial Services Limited has posted a 128% surge in net profit for the first quarter ended June 30, 2025, powered by disciplined cost control, stronger loan performance, and strategic brand rationalization. The company recorded $40.5 million in net profit, more than doubling the $17.8 million earned in the same period last year. Operating profit rose to $85.3 million, a sharp 63% jump from $52.3 million in the first quarter of 2024, despite revenue inching up just 3% to $555.5 million. Our core and non-core services are working in tandem to deliver meaningful value, says Managing Director Jacinth Hall Tracy. The strategies we rolled out last year are gaining traction, and we are cautiously optimistic about continued improvements, she added. And we go now to news from the Bank of Jamaica on how the currency markets traded today. In Wednesday's currency trading session, the US dollar is selling for $161.25, the Canadian for $116.65, the pound sterling for $214.84, while $188.48 is the going rate for the euro. And we go now to news from the Jamaica Stock Exchange and how the local equity markets traded today. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 114 stocks, of which 45 advanced, 48 declined, and 21 traded firm. Today's winners are Iron Rock Insurance Company, MPC Caribbean Clean Energy USD, Atlantic Hardware and Plumbing Company, and Kelly Group. While leading the losers are ISP Financial Services, JFP Limited, Jamaica Public Service 7%, and Palace Amusement Company. Now the JSE index advanced by 495.41 points, or 0.16% to close at 307,743.10 points. The junior market index advanced by 10.43 points, or 0.30%, to close at 3,472.68 points.
And it's time for Market Education Feature, brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standard.
And in today's Market Education Feature, we'll be looking at the term development finance. Development finance is a strategic tool used by communities to improve quality of life throughout public and private investment in business, industry, and redevelopment. It addresses local challenges like pollution or limited access to capital by applying tailored financial solutions such as loans, bonds, equity, guarantees, and incentives. From supporting small businesses to funding green projects, development finance helps unlock growth, attract investment, and build stronger, more resilient communities.
The Market Education Feature was brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standards.
That's it for the local segment of the newscast, but please do stay with us. The regional news segment is up next.
The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses. And Pulse Investments.
So much book you need for high school?
I'll show you how to make sure you have all the money for my books and even some extra. It's called budgeting, Dad. Making a budget is the most important thing you can do to track your money. It keeps a record of how much you make, how much you spend, where you spend it, and most importantly, how much you can save. Write down all your income, write down all your expenses, see where you can cut down and allot more money to more important things, like saving.
Welcome back. And now for the regional business news. U.S. oil giant ExxonMobil is poised to make a dramatic return to Trinidad and Tobago's energy sector, with the government agreeing to award the company exploration acreage in a newly defined ultra-deepwater area covering 7 blocks. The deal, which could be signed as early as next week, marks ExxonMobil's re-entry into Trinidad more than 2 decades after its exit, and positions the company just northwest of its highly lucrative Starbuck block in Guyana, home to over 11 billion barrels of recoverable oil resources. The new acreage, rebranded as Ultra Deep 1, UD1, spans water depths of 2,000 to 3,000 meters off the east coast of the country. At a press briefing last week, ExxonMobil CEO Darren Woods emphasized that exploration is a key part of the company's strategy to sustain its resource base. The announcement also comes as Trinidad reels from the suspension of a flagship gas project with Venezuela, which lost its U.S. license earlier this year and has since been shelved. The project was projected to relieve some of the country's gas shortages. If successful, the ExxonMobil deal could mark a significant breakthrough in Trinidad's effort to unlock new offshore oil potential. The Guyana Manufacturing and Services Association, GMSA, has welcomed the decision by U.S. President Donald Trump to slash reciprocal tariffs on Guyanese exports from 38% to 15%. The announcement comes as part of a wider executive order signed by President Trump last Friday, adjusting tariffs on several countries. While Guyana benefited from a significant reduction, other nations such as Canada, Brazil, and Switzerland were hit with increased rates, some as high as 41%. In a recent statement, the GMSA extended sincere appreciation to the government of Guyana for its active role in the negotiations and pledged full support for ongoing diplomatic and trade efforts to further reduce tariff barriers. The association remains committed to advocating for the interests of local manufacturers and service providers and will continue to work with the national and international partners to unlock new trade opportunities for Guyanese business, says the GMA. Meanwhile, U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer says the new bilateral trade arrangements will hold, even if the U.S. Supreme Court ultimately rules against the president's authority to impose country-specific tariffs. And the Central Bank of Belize has officially begun circulation of a newly designed series of banknotes, replacing the image of the late Queen Elizabeth II with portraits of Belize's two national heroes. The move marks a major milestone in the country's post-colonial monetary evolution and comes amid efforts to reinforce national identity while modernizing currency security. The new notes, spanning the $2, $5, $10, $20, $50, and $100 denominations, entered circulation this week and are being dispensed through commercial banks and ATMs nationwide. All notes in the series have been declared legal tender. The central bank emphasized that the redesign does not affect the value of the Belize dollar. The exchange rate remains fixed at Belizean $2 to US $1, and both old and new notes will circulate concurrently during the transition. The central bank also noted that the new banknotes feature non-security features, including updated holograms, microprinting, and tactile elements to improve accessibility for the visually impaired, bringing the Belizean dollar in line with global currency standards. And it's now time for news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 22 securities, of which 11 advanced, 3 declined, and 8 traded firm. Today's winners are Guardian Holdings, Trinidad Cement, Trinidad and Tobago NGL, and National Enterprises, while leading the losers are Massey Holdings, Angostura Holdings, and Prestige Holdings. Now, trading activity resulted in the following movements. The All TNT Index advanced by 6.15 points to close at 1,460.48. The Composite Index advanced, but by 3.34 points to close at 1,013.93. The Cross-Listed Index also advanced, but by 0.05 points to close at 75.07. And the SME Index remained at 100.27. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The international news segment with Nielsen Rose is up next.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. In the international news today, Canada recorded a seasonally adjusted trade deficit of 5.9 billion Canadian dollars in June, up from a revised 5.5 billion in May and aligning closely with market expectations of 5.8 billion. Imports rose by 1.4% to 67.6 billion, marking the first increase in 4 months. This growth was driven by a one-time high-value shipment of industrial machinery, equipment and parts. Without this shipment, imports would have declined by 1.9%. Exports increased by 0.9% to 61.7 billion. Exports to the United States climbed 3.1% from May, despite ongoing sector-specific and Canadian-specific tariffs. However, they remain 12.5% lower compared to June 2024. Industrial producer prices in the euro area rose 0.8% month over month in June, ending a 3-month streak of sharp declines and beating market expectations. Energy prices surged by 3.2%, reversing a 2.2% drop in May, while non-durable consumer goods saw a modest increase of 0.2%, slightly below May's 0.3% rise. Durable goods, on the other hand, and capital goods both edged up 0.1%, with capital goods maintaining the same pace as the previous month. Intermediate goods, in the meantime, saw a fall in prices of 0.2%, marking their third consecutive monthly decline. On a year-over-year basis, producer prices inflation accelerated to 0.6%, up from 0.3% in May and slightly above the market forecast of 0.5%. President Donald Trump confirmed on Tuesday that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will not be nominated to lead the Federal Reserve, narrowing the pool of candidates to 4 as he prepares to name a successor to current chair Jerome Powell. In a morning interview with CNBC, Trump stated, "I love Scott, but he wants to stay where he is," referring to Bessent's decision to remain at the Treasury. The announcement comes amid heightened speculation over the future leadership of the central bank, as Powell's term is set to expire in May 2026. Trump also revealed that his shortlist includes former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh and National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett, both of whom he said are doing well. He also mentioned 2 additional unnamed candidates, while leaving open the possibility that Fed Governor Chris Waller could become one of them, though he did not confirm this directly. The president's comment followed an unexpected resignation of Fed Governor Adriana Kugler, whose departure takes effect August 8. Trump also indicated that a nominee to fill Kugler's seat could be announced within days and hinted that the appointee might also be considered for the chairmanship. Trump has long criticized Powell's monetary stance, particularly his resistance to aggressive rate cuts. Analysts suggest the upcoming appointment could mark a shift toward a more dovish Fed, aligning with Trump's economic agenda. The U.S. trade deficit narrowed to $60.2 billion in June, the smallest gap since September 2023. This marks a significant improvement from the revised $71.7 billion deficit in May and beats the market projections of $61.6 billion. Imports fell by 3.7% to $337.5 billion, the lowest since March 2024, driven by declines in pharmaceuticals, passenger cars, crude oil, and nuclear fuel materials. Exports dipped 0.5% to $277.3 billion, the lowest since January, mainly due to reduced shipments of finished metal shapes, non-monetary gold, and computer accessories. Trade balances by countries saw Mexico having the largest deficit at $16.3 billion, slightly below the $17.1 billion last month. China's deficit narrowed to 9.4, while European Union saw a deficit shrinking significantly to 9.5 billion from 22.5. Vietnam's deficit widened to 16.2 from 15, while Taiwan increased to 12.9, moving from 11.5. India saw a slight rise to 5.3 billion from 5.1, while Switzerland's trade balance shifted to a minor deficit of less than 0.1 billion. And those were your international business stories. After the break, join Randine for your recap.
We're here to open a savings account for my son John. I really want him to start saving and managing his own money.
And I need for safe to visit my father in New York.
Okay, based on what you said and our risk assessment, he will qualify for simplified customer due diligence requirements. I'll need your ID, proof of income, TRN, and John's ID as well.
Okay, here you go.
Opening an account is easier than you think using simplified customer due diligence requirements, also called CDD.
And now to recap our top stories in the local news. Policy continuity must be top priority for incoming government, says economists. Regionally, ExxonMobil set to return to Trinidad and Tobago with a major ultra-deepwater oil and gas deal. And internationally, Trump rules out Bessent for Fed chair, narrowing candidate list to 4. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of Nielsen Rose and the entire production team, I'm Rondine Williams, thanking you for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.